Hello, and welcome to this special Christmas episode of Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 1 of Chobits. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So, to be entirely honest, I don't really know much of anything about Chobits. I guess all I really know is that it's about, robots and a guy who falls in love with a robot, and, the robot's kind of like a cute, fairly vacant-minded girl. That and I know about, where the power button is, so to speak, but, I've heard about this for years, really, and, having just gotten through the majority of Code Geass, I've decided to give Clamp a bit of a chance. I've always sort of, maybe not shunned their work, but I've sort of, avoided it because I don't like their lanky character designs usually, but, Code Geass was good, even though they only did the designing, and, this sort of lacks the characteristic trademarks of Clamp, at least insofar as character design. So I figured, it's effectively a classic. I might give it a watch. Alright, so the poor guy has failed to get into college. I guess where I live, getting into college was no mean thing. You might not get into the school you want, but to be rejected everywhere is something. Now, I should probably say that one of the other things I know about Chobits is the lovely opening theme. And that was a pretty considerable part of the catalyst to watch Chobits now, just because I've been listening to it lately and it is such a beautiful song. I mean, if I had to peg it to what I specifically like, it's the backing vocals and the bass line. Those two things are just really, really nice. The guitar is just light and jangly, but it's not overstated. You can hear the bass line, and it's a beautiful active bass line. Just good stuff all around, basically. So I guess computers are effectively people, persocoms, personal computers, people, something like that. Oh. So, I don't know exactly how old Chobits is, but the way the main character is talking about the internet and all that stuff leads me to believe this is, probably pretty old. It is interesting that, computers are effectively, humanoid in nature, I don't know, if my trusty old laptop here was shaped like a pretty girl, boy howdy life would be different. I would not deign to install Windows 10 on her, that's for sure. So, the main character here, like, the guy, you know, he certainly has some problems, like, flunking out of college, or rather, not getting accepted into college, like, that's something, but he really doesn't seem to be all that socially well-adjusted, which, you know, a certain amount of is to be expected, but I'm thinking it's going to be a bit of a running theme that, like, he doesn't really fit in too much, hence why he might relate with a persicom more than a person. I mean, that is, of course, assuming the main heroine is a persicom. Whoa, buddy. And imagine admitting that out loud in public. Whoa, buddy. Man, and that's something else, just like trying to find your apartment. Like, I just don't get it. Like, moving to a city without sort of checking it out first. Like, I guess maybe he didn't really have much of a choice if, you know, he was hoping to get into school, but, man, Hideki, I don't think he's playing with the full deck here. Whoa, buddy. Imagine you admitted to wanting to surf illicit sites right in front of your landlord. Like, man, that's a good impression to make. So I guess this is another one of those just sort of issues, you know. If you live out in the country, you generally have, like, a lot more space, but, like, having moved to the city as Hideki has done now, like, it's a bit of a culture shock, because, you know, if you're, like, a broke student, you're not going to be able to afford that big of an apartment, or, you know, any apartment on your own, really. Like, you're likely going to have roommates. It doesn't seem to be the case for Hideki, but, you know, it seems like the trade-off will be he's living out of a shoebox. Alright, well, I guess at least he's getting down to business and unpacking and all that. You know, he seems to be reasonably diligent, which I think would put him in good stead in college, you know. Because really it's more of like a test of character, necessarily, rather than academic ability. You know, you do have to have the latter, but if you don't have good habits and you can't manage yourself, you know, you're not going to do well generally. So I guess this is a neighbor, but, is that like a slim model of persicom? Like a mobile persicom or something? So I guess that's another thing, you know, Hideki is, I guess, he has a tendency to be overly formal, where, you know, if this guy's a neighbor, you don't have to be all that super formal with them, you know, at least beyond introductions. Okay, so it is a persicom. I guess, wow, mobile unit 2, huh. Like, I thought the idea here is that persicoms were supposed to be effectively like people, which, you know, this little critter is, I suppose, albeit a really small one. So I guess it really is treated like persicoms are essentially personal computers, and that if you don't have one, you're sort of an outlier. So I guess Hideki really is, kind of a fish out of water here. So you can, like, email and do phone calls and all that stuff with the persicom. I guess I'm wondering how you actually do that, you know? Does, like, it's like a keyboard pop out of the persicom, or do you just, like, literally ask it, like, navigate to this site and, you know, do all that? And I guess more interestingly, it seems like persicoms are everywhere, you know, working in convenience stores. So it seems like they're not really just personal computers, they're, you know, more like automation too. So already, I guess it's kind of interesting, because, like, it seems like regular computers might not exist, or at least have been driven obsolete. I mean, that would be interesting if there are androids but no computers or cell phones or any of the usual stuff. You know, you just have essentially a Persicom to do everything for you. Wow, hint, hint, hint. You know, unless of course she's not a Persicom, she's just like, you know, some poor girl who's been left in the trash. You know, that is rather contrived, but at least his first reaction is like, oh boy, it's a corpse. You know, that is kind of funny actually, like a guy moves from a small town to the big city and suddenly he stumbles upon a murder. I guess it's rather fortunate that a Persicom has a highly noticeable, distinguishable feature, you know. Man, like, I imagine if they didn't have that, that would cause a lot of grief for the police. You know, you see a Persicom who's discharged its battery saying it's like, oh boy, what distinguishes it from a corpse? Oh, Hideki. Surely. I was gonna say surely he won't just like take the Persicom out of the trash, but, you know. Having seen the cover of the show here, you know, I know he does. It's interesting that a Persicom is so heavy. You know, because, like, he's really straining. It makes sense to a degree if they're effectively computers. You know, they have to have mechanical bits and metal and all that. Not to mention, like, all the locomotive bits that make him move. Now, tellingly, he seems to have left his little installation media behind. Something tells me that's going to come in very important later. Now I wonder, how heavy would a Persicom have to be? Because I feel like if they're made of, you know, metal and plastic and all that stuff, they'd have to weigh at least as much as a person their own size, right? So, I mean, they have to have, like, motors and actuators for all the joints and things. Now, one has to wonder, why just the bandages? You know, that doesn't bode well, even if it is a Persicom. I feel like they should be afforded some level of dignity, you know? And that level of dignity should be a bit more than what's going on here. Oh, here we go. Yeah, you have to push the on button, but the real question is, where is it? You know? Oh, Hideki. Like, I feel like if my laptop were a cute girl, boy howdy, this would be a rather uncomfortable startup process. I mean, surely I feel like there's gotta be a better place, right? Unless all Persicoms are girls, or modeled after them. Well, I guess, you know, best faith effort here, like, what would be a better place for a Switch, really? Because it would have to be something that you don't come into contact to on a daily basis accidentally. It would have to be something that you would only press deliberately. So I guess this kind of makes sense, but given that the Persicom is human-shaped, it has a little extra meaning. It's like, I was gonna say maybe like the nose, you know, like you boop it on the nose to turn it off and on, but like, suppose you accidentally get, like, whacked in the nose. Like, what then? It's no good. And, like, I don't know. I feel like there isn't much of a better place in the same way that, like, I don't know, like, the human body, all its bits have a purpose, you know, and a lot of them do things. I feel like it's sort of like the only place that's really like sufficiently out of the way where you wouldn't accidentally press it and turn it on and off. Oh my god, she's actually making a computer noise. I mean, I sort of assumed that like when you push the button it would make like the little Windows chiming noise, but I'm kind of glad it didn't. It is incredible that all the bandages just sort of fly off, you know? Like, obviously it's for dramatic effect, but, like, it makes you wonder, is that, like, the exhaust fan kicking in and displacing all the hot air, or what? Man, I really do love that bass line and the backing vocals. So I feel like Hideki... This is where things get weird, because, you know, he doesn't really know how to use a Persicom. And, this one seems to be, you know, maybe not entirely there. That might be, uncharitable, but, you know... I guess, like, I don't want to say it was in the trash for a reason, but it seems like maybe you shouldn't have left that CD behind. Oh boy. So Hideki, he's been reading too much fiction here, you know. He assumes Chu's gonna be competent out of the box, which, given like the blank-eyed expression she has, I feel like that's not gonna be the case. And I feel like just sort of like saying one word over and over again doesn't lend the impression of mental competence. Ooh, so that's another thing, like, yeah, he's gonna have to explain this, and it ain't gonna be easy. I mean, immediately, there's a whole host of issues, because surely you can't let your Persicom walk around as she is now. But, at the same time, like, how do you rectify this? You know, like, borrowing a t-shirt or something is only a short-term solution. I mean, a towel's even worse, you know, that's barely a short-term solution. Honestly, at this point, I feel like maybe calling off your plans would be the best thing to do here. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's any real good way to explain this after you told everyone you don't have a Persicom. Oh dear. So she seems to be a quick learner, but not in a good way. Wow, okay, so she's just like hiding behind him? Man, I guess if it works on his neighbor, so be it. Oh, yeah. You know, if he only just has the one towel, he's really gonna have to solve this clothing problem in short order. Because, you know, I feel like you can't get too far without a towel if you're going to be bathing and all that in public. So I guess the question is, like, is there any sort of, rule against him having a Persicom? Because, like, they're not people, right? And he wouldn't have to clear her with the landlord, would he? I feel like maybe he could just explain this by saying, like, hey, I found a Persicom in the trash. She's a little light on clothing, so, you know, don't mind her for a minute. I mean, I guess this is really just evidence that Hideki's sort of, you know, a little out there, not exactly socially competent. I guess he'll have to learn if he wants to sort of teach Chi to behave normally. I assume that's her name. You know, that's sort of how things go. That's the only word she can say, therefore that's what he decides to call her. Wow. You know, for someone who is so heavy when he's pulling her out of the trash, he sure picked her up and moved her quickly. Although I get the feeling, you know, she's learning, like, gestures and things from him. I feel like she's gonna cause some trouble pretty quickly. You know, I'm wondering, like, she's just learning, like, basic things right now, but I'm wondering how long it'll take her to get to, like, the toddler stage where you have to, like, cover up electrical outlets lest they stick a fork in them or something. And I'm wondering, are Persicoms entirely mechanical? Because, I feel like food and all that other stuff would be a bit of an issue too, because, like, it's one thing to have a roommate, but if they don't need anything, like, that at least is better. Man. At least his landlord is understanding. She doesn't seem to care that he's immediately brought a girl over. Although it is readily apparent that she is a persicom rather than an actual person. I don't think he necessarily deserves to be quite so lucky, but this is going to be lighthearted, I think, so I'm fine with it. I feel like maybe he could have, bailed on plans a little bit earlier rather than lying and acting suspicious, but, far be it from me to tell him what he should do. Alright, so is he gonna, give her a name now? Well, at least he's kind of understanding. It's like, I found you in the trash. You might be a bit banged up, hence why you can't speak that much. But, I don't know. There's a definite sense of innocence from the persicom. Just from that look alone, he surely can't throw her out, right? And I'm wondering, how serious is powering off a persicom, is it just like going to sleep? Is it something you do every day, or what? Because it's certainly being treated as rather serious here, I'd imagine. If you were to abandon her or throw her out. Oh, buddy. So, she might not be all there, but things could be worse, Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. Merry Christmas, Space Cowboy.